Well, it's neck and neck. The polls are absolutely inside the margin of error. So over the next 48 hours, it's leader versus leader as they slide right into the finishing line in the hope of picking up whatever votes they can from undecided Australians right up hard until 6 p.m. Saturday night. Someone who knows this more than most is my next guest, former Prime Minister of Australia, the Honourable Tony Abbott. Tony, thank you for joining me. I know you're coming to us from a special book launch tonight. I'll get to that in a moment, but I know you've done events across every state and territory in the past few months to support the coalition. You can read the electorate better than anyone I know. Is there a mood for change out there? Do Australians want Anthony Albanese as their Prime Minister?
That's why this election is so hard to read, Peter, because there doesn't appear to be any great move for change. Yes, there's some disappointment with the government. That's inevitable when a government has been there for 3 terms. But there certainly is no wave for change with Anthony Albanese like there was with Kevin 07. Now, we all know that very swiftly buyer's remorse set in with Kevin Rudd, but there's not even the initial enthusiasm for Albo that there was for Kevin 07.
It'd be a very rare thing for government to change hands, for the opposition leader to win with sort of a lukewarm reception in the community and limping over the line. I mean, governments survive by limping over the line, but we rarely see oppositions win limping over the line.
Well, that's exactly right, and that's why I think that this election will actually go down to the wire, and why it's still possible for coalition campaigners to be quite optimistic, notwithstanding the fact that the polls have been against them until very recently. And certainly, while I can understand some disappointment with the government, in the end, elections are not a referendum on the government, they're a choice. Who is the best possible government at this time? And whatever failings it might have, I'm sure that's the Morrison government.
You will be too polite to say this in air, but I know you share my concern about net zero by 2050 and no credible path to get there. But the real risk here for the coalition isn't so much a move on by Labor. It's actually their own supporters, their own natural supporters, voting with third parties like Pauline Hanson or perhaps Clive Palmer, and the risk of preferences spraying all the way across the board and not coming back in a disciplined way. This could be an election where it comes down to preferences in just a handful of seats.
Exactly right, and it is, as you say, weird that Anthony Albanese could yet win not on first preference votes, but on minor party preferences. And you should be the first preference of the electorate if you are going to come into government from opposition. I guess I only have one bit of advice to people who might be tempted to vote for the Palmer Party or for One Nation. Don't necessarily follow their tickets, because their tickets will often put incumbents last. Make sure, if you're a Palmer voter or a One Nation voter, that you put the coalition ahead of the Labor Party.
You were opposition leader at 2 federal elections. No one would ever accuse Tony Abbott of being a small target. What do you make of not only the small target strategy in policy terms from Labor, but now in the last couple of days, we've got an opposition leader that's shutting down by lunchtime, closing off press conferences, and as we saw today, even trying to lose the Canberra Press Gallery?
That's a very fair point, and what it suggests to me is that the Labor hardheads know that the biggest risk for the Labor Party is Albo himself, which I suppose raises the question, why was he ever put there in the first place? This is a serious vote of no confidence in their leader by his own handlers.
Talk to me about your old seat of Warringah. I know you've been very supportive of Catherine Deves. You were out there campaigning with her yesterday. She's copped a barrage of criticism for saying the sort of comments I reckon that most ordinary Australians would be talking about, discussing at a barbecue around the dinner table. How's she holding up, and how's the feeling for her on the ground in your old seat?
Well, I can remember what the feeling was like 3 years ago, and I've got to say there was a lot of hostility. I think that the voters of Warringah worked out their hostility to the Liberal Party at the last election. I found Catherine very well received in Warringah yesterday when I was with her. I've certainly had a sense around the electorate that people are interested in this decent and appealing and commonsensical woman. And as for her views on safe sport for women, of course women shouldn't face unfair competition from biological males. I think 90% of the public are well and truly on her side.
Today in their costings, Labor booked a saving of $400 million because they're going to get rid of TPVs. They say that they'll still have Operation Sovereign Borders without a key plank. How do you feel about that? I know it's a policy close to your heart. I know you had to clean up Labor's mess last time. Can Australians trust Labor and Christina Keneally on the borders?
It's important to remember what happened back in 2007 when Kevin Rudd promised that he would turn boats around, and once he got elected he promptly forgot about that. They abolished TPVs, they never turned boats around, they closed down offshore processing. I think Labor will do exactly the same thing if they get another chance, and abolishing TPVs, that just means that the boats are back. And we know that Christina Keneally doesn't just want to abolish TPVs, she wants to close down offshore processing, and we know that in their hearts most Labor MPs and candidates think that turning boats around is not just immoral but illegal as well. So I think that we can be very confident that the people smugglers are hoping for a Labor victory.
All right, you're launching a very important book tonight. What is it?
It's called Why Christianity Matters in These Troubled Times. It's often said that politics is downstream of culture, and of course culture is downstream of religion. And the culture that has produced the most successful societies on earth has certainly been one that's been inspired for millennia by Christianity. Now, I'm not saying that everyone has to be a Christian. I can understand why, for all sorts of reasons, people might lack Christian faith, but we can't forget our Christian knowledge, and we should at least respect that which has made us. And I hope that people will read this book. It's got a selection of wonderful essays from some really outstanding Australians, and that's why I'm happy and honoured to be launching it tonight.
Of course, it's put together by the wonderful Dr. Kevin Donnelly, who's a good friend of this program. Tony Abbott, appreciate your time. Thank you for joining us this evening.